Welcome to the January 2024 edition of Hunt Camp Mail. Happy New Year, and I hope everyone enjoyed the holidays. It's been a really eye-opening month for me because I've ran into so many fans of this channel during my daily life this month. I spent New Year's on Catalina Island, and I ran into fans of this channel out on Catalina Island. I encountered fans of this channel in a restaurant, at my Albertsons grocery store, doing business, and even at my local boot barn. It's just humbling to have so many people approach me and ask, "Hey, are you Desert Dog?" It was a real pleasure to meet all of you, but please forgive me if I seem really surprised by the attention. It's just not something I'm used to. But if you see me, definitely say hello and introduce yourself. Well, I received a great deal of emails this month, probably more than I could possibly cover in one episode, so let's get to January's mail. Our first letter this month is from Victor in San Diego, California. Victor wrote, "Scope month was an eye-opening experience, pun intended. That was the best month on YouTube ever. I thought I knew everything, but those videos proved that I know very little. I buy quality American rings and mounts, but now I'm conflicted about lapping. I'm conflicted because ring manufacturers will not warranty rings if you lap them. Why would ring manufacturers not want a perfect install? Why would they be against taking stress off the scope tube? Thank you for the great videos and the link to the cheap alignment testing tool. I just ordered the 30mm tool with the sliding collar, and I'll double check my rings when I get it." Well, Victor, if you buy a new Jeep and you put a lift and big tires on it, Jeep will not warranty problems with your front axle. If you buy a new pair of pants and you hem the legs up so they fit you better, Wrangler will not warranty those pants. And if you buy a new baseball glove, then steam and oil and condition it to fit you, Rawlings will not warranty that baseball glove. And if you buy a rifle and have a gunsmith add iron sights to your barrel, the manufacturer is not going to warranty that barrel. Modifying things voids warranties. That's a fact of life. Unfortunately, some things need to be modified, and scope rings often fall into that category. When you lap rings, you're modifying them to fit that particular rifle with that particular base or rail on it. And no ring manufacturer in their right mind is going to warranty a modified product. And that's why lapping voids the warranty. So check your ring installation with the alignment tool when you get it, and decide for yourself whether or not you need to lap them. Or keep your warranty on your rings and use a scope with a distorted tube. It's a matter of personal choice. And our next letter is from William in Prior Lake, Minnesota. I don't know where Prior Lake is in Minnesota, but I imagine it's probably really cold there right now. William wrote, "Greetings, Desert Dog. Since you talked briefly about chronic wasting disease, I have a special interest in this disease as my brother-in-law passed away from CJD in Wyoming a few years back. In humans, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease can be inherited, happen spontaneously, be transmitted by infected tissue, or from eating contaminated meat. The disease is very rare. My brother-in-law has been elk hunting in an area where chronic wasting disease has been discovered. While dressing the elk, he cut himself with his knife. Was this the case of spontaneous mutation or a case of transmission via bloodstream contamination? It appears the Wyoming Health Department has no interest in this case. Here at the University of Minnesota, we have Dr. Michael Osterholm, a world-renowned epidemiologist who was on the forefront of the United Kingdom's mad cow disease outbreak. He is concerned, very concerned, about the transmission risk of chronic wasting disease to humans. I personally do not believe hunters have been told the truth about this disease process. It may take many years for it to show up after people have eaten meat consistently. After COVID and the lies and misinformation the U.S. government told the people, I just do not have faith in the CDC anymore." Well, as far as I know, everyone is being advised not to eat the meat of suspected animals and to not even touch them. You know, having said that, an animal in the early stages of chronic wasting disease will likely go unnoticed, and there's a high probability of it being shot and consumed by a hunter. You know, we've all been advised to wear gloves during processing and to have the animal tested before conception if your elk or deer was killed in a chronic wasting disease area. From what I understand, test results take from 2 to 6 weeks to get, depending on what state you're in, and they're usually free of charge. So if you live in a chronic wasting disease state or area, get testing done before you eat your animal. And that's just a modern reality that we have to live with as hunters. But most scientific minds involved with chronic wasting disease are very concerned. You know, I also agree with you that trusting the CDC is very hard to do these days. Our next letter is from Dan from New Mexico. Dan wrote, "Happy New Year, Desert Dog. I just wanted to show you my pre-64 Winchester. You inspired me to send a pac-nor to rebarrel to 35 Whelen. I free-floated and bedded the action. I got a good deal on my first ever Swarovski scope. Your lapping video was extremely good. I always thought modern machine technology meant lapping rings wasn't necessary these days, but boy was I wrong. I still have my Wheeler lapping kit, and I ordered a sleeve on eBay for my 1-inch scope size. As always, I can't wait to check YouTube regularly to see if there's another awesome video from the one and only Dog of the Desert." Well, thank you for the letter, Dan. And here's a pic of Dan's 35 Whelen build, built on a pre-64 Model 70 action. Boy, Dan, that's a legacy rifle right there. Basically something you'll enjoy to your last breath and then pass on to some young, lucky family member one day. That rifle is just something you can't really put a price on. And when you find a load that shoots great in that gun, nothing will ever satisfy that like that beauty will. It's a great gun. And our next letter is from fan favorite Paul in the UK. Paul wrote, "Hi, Desert Dog. Hope that you had a good family Christmas. I'm intrigued by the concept of cut shells. Not something you come across here in the UK, but there are a number of videos on YouTube showing how to make them and their accuracy. My inclination is that pushing the oversized cartridge shell outer casing down the gun barrel would cause a bulge or worse. I'd appreciate your thoughts on this subject. Are they a reasonable substitute for proper slugs?" Well, as always, thank you for the letter, Paul. And my opinion on that is that not only are cut shells less reliable, less lethal, and less accurate than a proper slug is, I also think they're more dangerous to the user. You know, they're a product of the Great Depression here in the United States, where cut shells were used to take larger game when ammunition was unaffordable or unavailable. But nowadays, a lot of people just shoot them for fun. But you don't see that nonsense in the UK because you guys buy and use the correct ammunition for the task at hand. Sadly, that's not always the case here. And our next letter is from Robert B. Robert B. wrote, "What do you recommend for a front rifle rest for sighting in a scope?" I think I've answered this on Hunt Camp Mail and a couple of videos before, but I recommend personally a fully adjustable front rest with some good weight to it that has lockdown features, so there's absolutely no wobble or play in it at all. Also, the contour of the bag itself needs to match the contour of the stock forend. So you want a rest where you can easily swap out bags on it. You know, if you have a rounded hunting style stock, you need a rounded bag like this. If you have a flat target stock, you need a flat bag to install on this. Also, the front rest should be capable of locking in the bag and adjusting the width of the bag. I find that, personally, I find that very important with the rests like this. And there's several front rests that meet this criteria, but I personally use this bald eagle rest. I think it's the triangle rest, and it's nice and heavy, made out of iron, and it's just totally solid, and I think the price is fair for what you get, so I tend to use the bald eagle rest. I'm, a huge proponent of shooting rifles and practicing from field positions, but if you're serious about precision shooting during load development or when you're setting up a rifle, you need a good front and rear rest, basically. A good front rest like this, coupled with a good rabbit ear rear bag, will remove a lot of the negative variables from your shooting. And our next letter is from John in Payson, Arizona. John wrote, I really enjoyed your series on scopes in December. You took on subjects rarely discussed in depth and, as usual, told it like it is. I took your episode on lapping to heart. The don't need lapping rings I had got another look and they needed lapping. As you know, this is an involved process because after you lap the rings, you have to remount the scope and re-sight in. Guess what? My wandering zeros completely disappeared. At this time, I thought I was just a poor shot. Now, thanks to you, I'm an average shot. Thank you for the letter, and I'm very happy that my video helped you solve one of your issues. The ring manufacturers are really going to hate me for introducing all of my viewers to the new scope ring alignment tools that are out. It's funny that most people out there, especially gun experts, constantly quote the great gunsmiths, but they never listen to their advice when it comes to lapping rings, do they? And our next letter is from Lou from Texas. Lou wrote, I'm going to use my 7mm rem mag using the 160 grain Nosler Accupoint. By aiming for the shoulder shot, will the bullet damage the skin too much for a mount? Well, no, your 7mm mag shooting a 160 grain Accupoint will not destroy the cape on your deer. Every taxidermist in this country patches up hundreds of bullet holes every year. And I mean, think about it. Broadhead wounds are much worse than bullet holes on the hide. And taxidermists have no problems with those. So find a good taxidermist and don't worry about it. And our next letter is from Martin from Idaho. Martin wrote, thank you for the tip on the new type of scope ring alignment checker. I ordered the cheap one in the link and the results are amazing and worrisome. I never lapped the scopes on my 3 hunting rifles because the Wheeler pointed tools look perfect. But obviously, now I know those tools can't be trusted. Your explanation as to why you can't trust them makes perfect sense. You teach us things that no other gun channel on YouTube does, and I thank you. Best wishes to you and your family. Well, thank you for the kind letter, Martin, and the compliments. Even before the newer sliding collar alignment tools were invented, we still didn't trust those pointy bars at all and just used precision cut bars with sharp 90-degree ends on them to kind of line up our scope rings. But what it came down to is trying to make a visual confirmation of scope ring alignment is a really bad way to do it. But the new sliding collar design totally takes human judgment out of the equation. And I'm glad I was able to show everybody something new during Scope Month. Thank you for the feedback. And our next letter is from Stephen from Sacramento, California. Stephen wrote, your reloading videos are the best. I've been reloading for almost 20 years, but I realized that I never had a good system down. I would load a bunch of different powder weights, shoot 3-shot groups, and pick the best one. Now I look for powder nodes, then play with seating depth, and my loads are amazing. I had no idea that seating depth could make a 2 MOA load a half MOA load. Removing my expander balls and running the necks through a mandrel twice gave me single-digit SDs for the first time in my life. You helped me see the light, as I'm sure others helped you see the light. Thank you for passing your wisdom down. A great letter. You know what? And basically you found out the difference between someone who loads ammo and somebody who develops loads. There's a big difference there. You know, your closing paragraph really stuck with me. The part where you said, you helped me see the light as I'm sure others helped you see the light. You know, that kind of stuck with me because it's so profoundly true. As with anything in life that we've grown comfortable with, it's easy to get complacent. And that complacency often fosters stubbornness. And out of that stubbornness comes a blind unwillingness to change. In the reloading world, most people get bitterly tenacious about their process and will never change or adapt to get better. You know, a target and a really good chronograph usually won't lie to you, but people do, and we also tend to lie to ourselves. If a simple change to your process gives you verifiable and consistently better results on target, it's probably time to change. As I've said in my reloading videos, my process has evolved probably dozens of times over the last 30 years, and I found that you need to set goals for each individual rifle. You know, for a scoped hunting rifle, I work to get, you know, a half MOA or better load in a stable powder node with an acceptable velocity, or at least in the velocity range I'm looking for. When I get that, I'm satisfied. But when someone else discovers a way for me to meet that goal easier, I'm all ears. Our next letter is from Doug from Idaho. Had a few letters this month from Idaho. Doug wrote, I've been recovering from a motorcycle accident for the last 3 months. I was not able to walk for 8 weeks. My job, family, and insurance company are taking care of me. That's a good thing. But missing this last hunting season really had me down. I tried to binge watch several channels, but I am addicted to your channel. I watched your videos starting with the old ones and progressing to the new ones. It was cool watching the video quality improve, but all of your content is great. Looking at dates, I think that after you create a video, other influencers copy your subjects. Some of them even repeat what you say like they used your video as a script. Your reloading and scope videos taught me a great deal and will have an impact on the way I do things. Watching you is like learning from a master. I hear and read other people cover topics and technical things, but I always want to hear your thoughts on the subject. I also saw that you almost stopped making hunt camp mail videos altogether. Please don't stop making them. Out of all of your videos, those are my favorites. Those videos kept me from going crazy while I was stuck in bed. And I know how that feels, man. I had a major motorcycle accident, actually not on my dirt bike years ago, and that was a long recovery process. So I know what you're going through, Doug, and I feel for you. But I think you're giving me way more credit than I deserve. You know, with all your downtime, it sounds like you explored the depths of YouTube hunting content and found a glitch in the matrix. You know, there's always going to be overlapping hunting content. You can't avoid it. But, you know, to get fresh ideas, video producers for some of the big channels will often mine content from the smaller channels. So that is a real thing, but there's always going to be overlapping content because subject matter is just not limitless. But there are some obvious things that are hard to ignore. I mean, you'll notice that after I came out with my hunt camp mail concept, all the major hunting influencers copied it. You know, when I threw animal skins over my desk for ambience, what did other influencers do? I mean, come on. You know, there's an obvious content pattern if you look across different channels, especially when companies send out new products for review at the same time. You know, you'll notice Hornady just came out with a new cartridge, and all of a sudden every channel's doing a review of it at the same time. Or, you know, Ruger just came out with the Ruger American Generation 2, and then, you know, all the same people do the same thing all the time. So, you know, you do get that aspect of YouTube. So, but, you know, sometimes influencers influencers are obviously trying to copy content, but just as often, they just want to cover a subject that they feel is relevant or popular at the time. And even I do that. And, you know, that isn't necessarily copying. But you need to understand that every hunting subject has been covered hundreds or thousands of times on YouTube. So it's our job as YouTube creators to add wisdom to the subject matter that gives the viewers a new perspective. And that's the difference between lazy content and great content. And I really strive to create great content. And our next letter is from Will from Scope Rods. And just so you know, Will owns the company that makes the budget scope alignment tool that I featured on my lapping video. So he owns the company that makes these, and he wrote me a letter. And Will wrote, I'm hearing back from customers who purchased the scope ring alignment tool that they'd heard about it from your YouTube channel. I recently had a huge uptick in sales, which is no doubt because of you. First, I want to thank you. Since your posting, I sold out all my inventory quickly. I reached out to a friend with some advanced machining equipment, and I'm getting a larger inventory made. 1-inch and 34 millimeter are almost complete, and I should have more 30 millimeter tools complete soon. Thank you again. If you ever need another set, please just let me know. It's the least I can do. And what a great letter. You know, I love it when small businesses get a boost like that. You know, as long as you maintain high quality standards, a fair price, and good customer service, your tools should sell pretty well. You know, also, Will stated to me that he started an Amazon store to sell his alignment tools, and I updated the link in that scope lapping video for you so you can easily find that out. Also, the Australian company that makes the premium steel alignment tool is also out of inventory due to my video, and they also sent me a letter from Australia, and I guess they're sending me a free ring alignment tool. You can always back order from them. I have products from them that I bought in the past, and it's worth the wait. And our next letter is from Craig, and Craig didn't indicate where he was from. Craig wrote, looking to buy the 828U, but after watching your review of the shotgun, which was very informative, I'm starting to second guess my decision and might look in a different direction. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the gun now. Thank you for your advice. I posted that 828 review almost 2 years ago, and I've used this little shotgun extensively over 2 upland seasons now. I've had 2 full seasons on it, and I've just had no further issues with it, and I actually love this gun. Those of you who watch my channel or know me know that I walk a lot, so I really appreciate the lightweight and slim profile of this little 20 gauge beauty. You know, I just can't get past how well this gun fits me after I adjusted it in. You know, camber, length of pull can be adjusted with, you know, perfectly in under an hour, which is unheard of in the over and under shotgun world. You know, and I actually find myself taking this out in the field more often these days when I'm hunting quail or pheasant, and this gun has even killed a couple limits of doves this year. You know, I know there's a risk to buying this gun because of problems I had with it in the past, but I'm glad I stuck with it, and I kind of let Benelli work the issues out on it. You know, I've been a Beretta 686 guy my whole life, but I didn't touch a 686 last season. This was my go-to gun when I wanted an over and under in the field. And our next letter is from Colby from New Hampshire. And I think this might be the first letter I've ever gotten from New Hampshire. Colby wrote, hey Desert Dog, I'm looking to purchase my first hunting rifle and have pretty much settled on a rifle from the new Montana Rifle Company. It seems pretty much like a modern pre-64 Winchester in stainless steel. I plan for this to be my one rifle for quite a while, hence why I'm willing to pay $2,000 for this rifle. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this rifle as well as chambering. I'm deciding between 308, 300 Win Mag, and 7 PRC for this rifle. I know the 307 are vastly overkill for the tight woods of the East, but I like the extended range capability for possible Western hunts. Well, Colby, I was never really a huge, an enormous fan of the old Montana rifles, you know, which had receivers that were cast by Ruger and then machined down at their Montana factory. You know, I honestly thought that the Winchester Model 70 receivers made by FN were actually better than those old Montana company receivers. Having said that, the new fully machined stainless receivers that the new owners are making do have my interest. You know, unlike the old actions, the new ones are truly a real precision custom action. And if that's what you really want, you don't need my permission to get it. But I will point out that you have no need for a 300 or 7mm Magnum or 7 PRC, which is a Magnum. You know, you have no need for that anywhere within 2,000 miles of where you live. In fact, you don't even need it out west where I'm at either. You know, Randy Newberg is probably the most famous and successful public land rifle hunter in the western United States right now. And he uses a 308 and a 7mm 08 to kill most of his elk and deer. So that's all you need. And it's kind of the perfect cartridge for your eastern woods for deer and bear too. And our next letter is from Brian from Indiana. Brian wrote, "Through the algorithms of YouTube, I discovered your channel while off work with COVID. I am already hooked on your videos with the straightforward and no embellishment approach to the subject matters you discuss. I am both a hunter and target shooter. I will be rebarreling a Savage 110 from 308 to 7mm 08 with a 22-inch heavy sporter contour barrel. My question is, what twist rate would you recommend if 150 grain bullets will probably be the heaviest I'll shoot? Barrel manufacturers and gun makers are all over the place with twist rates running from 1 to 8 to 1 to 10. Glancing at the gun maker's specification, I'm seeing 1 in 8.5 to 1 in 9.5 as being the most common, with a few stragglers at 1 in 10. What would be your recommendation?" Well, you picked a great cartridge to use. You know, I love the 7mm 08. But get it rebarreled with a 1 in 8.5 twist. You know, this will cover any lead bullet load from 120 grains all the way up to 180 grains. It's also a great twist rate if you want to shoot the really long 150 to 168 grain monometal bullets. So I highly recommend a 1 in 8.5 twist for that. And our next letter is from Ray in Orange, California. Ray wrote, "I watched your recent used rifle roulette show and was interested in your reloading technique. I went to your channel and found your video called Getting Started in Reloading. You had a chapter in that video called The Process, where you perform your process for load development. I'm an engineer with 30 years of experience. I observed you doing a full load development process using only 60 to 70 rounds fired. I do not see such a low round count being statistically relevant to get a real average for velocity or group size. 20 round groups should be more useful. Using your methodology, you would need hundreds of firings to get data that comes close to being statistically relevant. Knowing this, do you feel that you are finding loads by random luck?" Ooh, kind of ends with an assumption there. Ray, you are definitely 100% a real engineer, and I could tell. You know, although engineers are necessary, they tend to overthink everything. They tend to complicate simple things, engage in circular reasoning, and often suffer from paralysis by analysis. And in your case, I believe that you suffer from paralysis by analysis. In the firearms world, we have many engineers and professional ballisticians. You know, many of them, like Brian Litz, are just absolutely brilliant. You know, and he would agree with what you said, you know, as would probably most engineers that shoot. But they will never fire enough rounds to make them happy with the data. That's the truth. One statistician stated that with a large enough sample size, commercial ammunition is just as good as hand loads. You know, talk about overanalyzing. And just to let you know, Ray, I also have a degree in the sciences. And, you know, I love science and statistics, but I also put a lot of credence in results. You know, the top shooters in the world do the exact opposite of what engineers and ballisticians do. And they win championships doing it. You know, Brian Litz gets his butt kicked by F-class and BR shooters that do a simple low-round load development process. You know, to a competitive shooter, barrel life is precious. So they've developed shortcuts to load development that require as few shots as possible. You know, and they win championships with those loads. The true test of a load isn't a statistical formula or volumes of data. It's on the target downrange. You know, your average hunter considers brass, powder, and primers as precious commodities that can't be wasted. You know, and as hunters, we want to find a stable, accurate, and fast enough load using the bare minimum of components to get that. My load development process, you know, changes and evolves through time, just like everything. But no matter what, I always strive for a process that gives me the best results with the least amount of time, effort, and expenses. To everybody but an engineer, that's the goal of load development. And our next letter is from Michael. You know, I never really add super long letters that people write me to Hunt Camp Mail because I just don't have the time or the space to inject it into the video. But I'm going to make an exception in Michael's case because it's a very interesting letter. Michael wrote, "Hey Desert Dog, I've never emailed anyone from YouTube, but this is one time that I must. My eyebrow went up when you shared the story of the face in the fire and the witch doctor on your Africa Q&A video. Something similar but different happened on a 1990 caribou hunt in Alaska. 2 nights into our hunt, the northern lights were out, so we built a bonfire and stayed up to watch them. After dinner, the fire had died down and we noticed the perfect image of a bear skull in the fire from a tree root we had thrown in the fire. We just stared at it. The next day, hunting was slow. We devised a plan where Jim would go down into a bowl and I would watch from above the tree line to see if he flushed anything out. Jim came back hours later a little shaken and proceeded to tell me what had transpired down in the bowl the 4 hours he was gone. He had stumbled onto a dead moose that a grizzly had partially buried as a food cache. The moose carcass reeked, but he said as he moved slowly away, the odor changed to a musky smell of a bear. Jim and I were both seasoned bear hunters, and we knew exactly what he was talking about. As we stared at one another, I said, 'You know we saw that bear skull last night in the fire. Are you putting this all together?' He said, 'Michael, it's all I could think about the whole time I was moving out of the area and I was scared.' We never forgot that hunt and the eerie happenings of that hunt. I shared the story down through the years with my wife, sons, family, and friends. When you shared your story of the face in the fire, I was floored and it all came rushing back. I can remember the details like it was yesterday. Maybe this will help you make heads or tails out of what you witnessed in a similar way." It's a very interesting letter and story. You know, in case you don't know what Michael's referring to, he's actually talking about a story I revealed in my Africa Q&A video from 2022. In that story, I reveal how I struck a bargain with a local witch doctor in the Zambezi Valley of Zimbabwe. And that night, we saw a face appear in the fire that kind of looked like the witch doctor when we started talking about him. You know, in that video, I showed a picture of the face in the fire that my wife took, and it freaked a lot of people out. You know, I've spent a lot of time on 5 continents with indigenous people in some remote places, and I've seen a lot of strange and unexplainable things. You know, I'm not a religious man at all, but I am receptive to the notion that there's many things beyond our understanding or comprehension. All I know is that people who are more connected to the earth than I will ever be insisted that what I saw and the events that unfolded were not a coincidence. But rather than trying to rationalize it or putting it into the framework of your own religion, sometimes you just have to accept it for what it is. And our next letter is from Clayton. And Clayton didn't indicate where he's from. Clayton wrote, I'm looking at scopes for my 300 H&H. Have you tried the Trigicon Accupoint scopes? They have one similar to your Credo, but with non-electric illuminated duplex reticle as an option. Seems to have similar scope tube space as the Credo. Well, the Credo line of scopes was a replacement for the old AccuPower scopes, which were basically the battery-powered version of the Accupoint. When Trigicon came out with the AccuPower scopes, they quickly found that people preferred the battery power over the tritium. You know, I'm personally, though, not a fan of the Accupoint scopes. To my eyes, they always seem to have too little illumination when I need it to be bright, and too much illumination when I want it to be dim. So in my opinion, a battery-powered illuminated reticle is a lot better. Another con to the Accupoint is that the tritium and fiber optic will need to be replaced in about 10 years. And during that time, it gradually gets dimmer and dimmer. And getting your tritium replaced is not cheap. But the battery on the Credo runs for a long time. You know, it's a cheap thing that can be replaced every year in less than a minute. So the illumination controls on the Credo are excellent, and I much prefer those over the Accupoint that you're interested in. And our next letter is from Brad from Wisconsin. Brad wrote, I have a question about the Model 70 extreme weather video. Did you shoot the rifle yourself to confirm its bad grouping before you decided to invest in all the accurizing efforts? Maybe your friend was just a poor shot or was just using loads the rifle didn't like. I wonder if the rifle might have been able to produce decent groups with just a simple ammunition or shooter change without needing the other work or expenses that were put into it. I honestly really didn't care how the rifle shot before I did the mods. You know, I simply did the things to this rifle that I do on rifles that I plan to keep. You know, I'd rather do all of my mods at one time instead of doing one mod at a time and wasting time and ammunition zeroing and shooting groups after each modification. You know, I bed the stock on every rifle I plan to keep. I want a perfect trigger on every rifle I plan to keep. I want my optics mounted perfectly on every rifle I plan to keep. And I do load development on every rifle I plan to keep. You know, it would have been stupid for me not to do this all at once, at the same time at least, while I had the rifle apart on the workbench. You know, if I'm going to rebuild the front axle on a Jeep, I'm not going to tear it apart 5 times and add parts little by little. I'm going to do it all at once, and that's what I did with this gun. You know, that video wasn't some process of elimination like a lot of people wanted it to be. You know, it was just me doing what I do to all of my personal rifles. And as you saw in the video, it usually yields great results. And our next letter is from Mike in Bozeman, Montana. Mike wrote, your last video about hunters dividing into factions was relevant to Montana hunters. It seems like half of Montana consists of transplants from other states these days, and they are drastically changing the culture here. Even many of the so-called conservative transplants have socialist tendencies. Those of us who were born and raised in Montana love our public land, while at the same time loving our private property rights. People from other states can't seem to comprehend or respect that balance. Getting butthurt about hunting leases, pictures of trophies, and sponsored hunting shows is stupidity at its worst. As you stated before, habitat loss is our biggest enemy. As people flood Montana from liberal states, they all want their little ranchettes and shopping centers. Our politicians have become drunk on the tax revenue from these people, so development is rampant and done in an irresponsible way. Thank you for tackling issues on your channel that others avoid. The next time you come through Bozeman, the beer is on me. God, a beer sounds good right now. I just got off work, by the way. You know, I agree. Whether you're a diehard hunter, an angler, or a hiker, we all have one common interest, and that's to fight habitat loss. Those who don't see habitat loss as the single biggest enemy of wildlife and the environment are totally and irreparably blind. You know, you're 100% correct. Arguing about posting hunting pictures on social media is stupid and a waste of air. Montana is currently ground zero in the fight against habitat loss, in my opinion. You know, a lot of riverbank in Montana that I used to throw flies from are now housing developments or fenced off ranchettes. And, you know, I don't even recognize Missoula or Bozeman anymore. You know, and the same thing is happening in Idaho right now too. And I wish more people would see this. But I'll be in I'll actually be in Bozeman in March for a few days. So maybe I'll take you up on that beer. And our last letter for the month is from Mitch in Las Vegas, Nevada. Mitch wrote, I keep asking you for guidance about my .22 rifles, and you always set me on the right path. I think it's time that you make a video about the .22 long rifle, so I'll stop bothering you every month with questions. Also, I found some of the SK ammo we talked about and provided you with a link. That stuff won't last long. Well, I want to thank you very much for the tip on that ammo. I immediately ordered a box of 50 to test out, and it shot really good, so I was able to get 1,000 more rounds of that same lot number, and I want to thank you very much for that heads up. On the video request, I'm definitely an avid .22 guy. You know, I hunt with it, plink with it, and used to compete in bench rest with it. You know, recently I got back into local NRL .22 activity. But, you know, I never made a .22 long rifle video because there's just so many of them on YouTube already. But who knows, maybe I'll do one of my history and relevance videos on it. You know, I do have a lot of hard-won tidbits of wisdom when it comes to the old deuce, so I'll think about your request. Well, so that concludes January's mail. Here's some memes for this month. Before I close out this video, I want to discuss something that I recently did. About 5 years ago, I did a video about a problem I found with the Vortex loaded commercial ammo from Barnes. You know, it was mainly in the belted Magnum cartridges, but people were getting boxes of Vortex ammo with loose bullets in the case necks. You know, I just bedded a rifle for a friend, and he wanted me to zero it with Barnes Vortex ammo. So I bought 2 boxes of 300 Magnum, and the bullets were just so loose in the neck that you can rotate them with your fingertips with very little effort. Some of them I can almost completely pull out. There was basically zero neck tension on those. But myself and many other people called Barnes to complain, and we were told that the ammo was perfectly fine and loose bullets are normal. You know, I even called Barnes a second time for that video, and I spoke to another employee and was told that loose bullets have no effect on accuracy or velocity. You know, that video went viral, and hundreds of people chimed in having similar issues with the Barnes Vortex loaded ammo. Barnes employees contacted me after I made that video and asked me to take that video down, claiming that they completely resolved the issue. But I didn't take that video down. I left it up. Not because of a random quality issue at the factory, because, you know, every ammo manufacturer in existence has made bad lots of ammo. I mean, it happens. The reason I left that video up was because they were telling customers that the ammo was perfectly fine. You know, as a lifelong reloader with a high degree of knowledge on the subject, I knew that Barnes was being shady. You know, but that was when Remington Outdoor Company owned Barnes, you know, which is no longer the case now. You know, I've loaded Barnes copper bullets for over 25 years, and the quality never wavered on their bullets. They've always been excellent. It was only the Vortex loaded ammunition that had issues, and that was mainly in the belted Magnum cartridges. But I've been monitoring that issue since I made that video, you know, for what, 4 years now? And I haven't seen another complaint about loose bullets and Vortex ammo for a few years now. So in fairness to the good folks at Barnes, I finally took that video down because I just felt it was the right thing to do. Also, I'm getting the highest volume of mail that I've ever had since I started doing this. You know, there's no possible way that I could cram a quarter of my emails into one episode of Hunt Camp Mail anymore. But I try to personally answer letters that don't make my Hunt Camp Mail episodes, but it's hard to get to them all anymore, so please be patient with me. And as a friendly reminder, some of you send me emails with lots of questions in them. Philip sent me a very long email with 14 questions in it this month, and I had to disregard your letter, Philip. So please try to keep it to one question, and please try to keep your letter as brief as possible. Well, you know, I hope everyone enjoyed this long episode of Hunt Camp Mail, and I hope I didn't bore you too much. You can reach me with any questions or comments at desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. I want to thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.